Hi, we're out on the range today, so please bear with gunfire you hear in the background. Now, when we do ammunition comparisons, chronograph testing is a big part of that. And not always, but I typically shoot at a distance of 7 yards, mainly because the FBI spent decades telling us that 7 yards was the mean distance for a lethal confrontation. And a common result I get is that the velocities I'm reading are less than advertised velocities. Recently I've had some feedback from people telling me that shooting at 7 yards is invalid because the advertised velocities are muzzle velocities, and you've lost a lot by the time you shoot the excessive distance of 7 yards. I'm also getting feedback from people telling me that testing ammunition at 7 yards is invalid because if you're ever really called upon to use your pistol, 2 yards is going to be more realistic. Well, if you want to discuss how far you might really have to shoot, we do have a presentation on gunfight statistics, and you can watch that. But as far as losing velocity, we know that as a bullet goes downrange, it's going to lose velocity. But how much are you really going to lose between 2 yards and the excessive distance of 7 yards? Well, I have my chronograph and I have some pistols. Let's see what we can learn about that. I have my chronograph set up at 7 yards, and I have my Beretta Model 92 FS, and it's loaded with Remington green and white box 9x19 115 grain full metal jacket round nose. Let's see what kind of velocities we get. $11.55, $11.61, $11.61, $11.39, $11.73, and $11.43. Now let's try that from 2 yards and see how the numbers compare. $11.80, $11.74, $11.59, $11.74, and $11.69. Now let's go crunch those numbers. Now in firing from 7 yards, did you notice that I got the number 1161 twice in a row? I threw one of those out, that's why I fired the second shot. So having done that, when I crunched the numbers, I got a mean velocity from 7 yards of 1,154 feet per second. When I moved up to 2 yards, I got 1,171, a net gain of 17 feet per second. That's within the variation of one round to the next, hardly what you could consider a significant difference in velocity. But let's try it with a different gun. Now let's try with this Smith & Wesson M&P 22 caliber 22 long rifle, and I have it loaded with CCI Minimag 36 grain hollow points. $1,081, $1,088, $1,045, $1,040, and $1,082. Now let's try that from 2 yards. $1,069, $1,039, $1,065, $1,085, and $1,071. Now let's crunch those numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers, and with a 22 from 7 yards we got a mean velocity of 1,067, and from 2 yards we got 1,065. That's less, because the variation from one round to the next makes more difference than going from 2 yards to 7 yards. I could do this test again, and the numbers might vary slightly, but we can still see there's no significant loss in velocity going from 2 yards to 7. Let's try one more gun. This is my Rock Island Arms Baby Rock caliber 380 ACP, and I have it loaded with Remington green and white box 380 ACP 95 grain full metal jacket round nose. Let's see what kind of numbers we get with this. $992, 960, 952, 945, 994. Now let's try that from 2 yards. I had to take a moment to reload my magazine, but let's see how we do at 2 yards. 979, 993, 968, 997, 951. Now let's go crunch those numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers, and with the 380 shooting from 7 yards, I got a mean velocity of 968 feet per second. From 2 yards, it was 976, a net gain of 8 feet per second, well within the variation of one round to the next. Now, a couple of things I have to say are that chronographs don't always agree with each other, and certain environmental factors like ambient temperature, barometric pressure, and elevation can affect chronograph results. Also, we know that as a bullet goes downrange, it loses velocity. But the hypothesis that between 2 yards and 7 yards enough velocity will be lost to significantly affect performance is an hypothesis that cannot be supported by these numbers. So, as always, don't try this at home on What You Call a Professional, and thanks for watching the excessive distance of 7 yards video.